Thank you, and good morning. It's such an honor to be here with WEConnect International and truly talk about an organization that's so collaborative and inclusive. Thank you for the opportunity to be a partner. But without further ado, we are joined today for a really important conversation with two very powerful women who I think everybody in this room probably knows very well. So to my left, Theresa Harrison, who is the Global Diversity and Inclusive Leader of Procurement at EY. And gosh, what could you say about Theresa Harrison? She is the chair of WeBank. And I am friends with Theresa on social media, and every day I open up my Facebook and say, where in the world is Theresa Harrison today? Because she is everywhere. And to my immediate left, we have Natalie Stirling-Sanders, who is the Category Family Manager for Transportation and Logistics Procurement with ExxonMobil, and also a very powerful woman who currently serves as the Vice Chair of WEConnect International. And one of the things that caught my attention from your bio is that prior to being in the oil and gas industry, and she's been in the oil and gas industry for a long time, she was active in the Canadian federal political arena. So a very well-rounded, powerful woman. So we are here to talk about the challenges and perspectives on progress on how to advance global supplier diversity. And you know, we know that you can have the best strategies and the best goals, but that culture eats those things morning, noon, and night. So culture is really, really an important role in advancing what you're trying to accomplish. And so I just thought maybe we could kick it off, and if you could each tell us about the culture in your organization around diversity and inclusion and why it's so important.
You know, I think one of the things that I see at EY is that it's really ingrained in our DNA, how we just operate. It's part of our overall platform and values as an organization. More specifically on the women front, we've executed this Women Fast Forward platform where we're really looking at getting through the disparity in the workplace, as well as women as entrepreneurs, women as athletes, women on boards, and women in the executive. So one of the things I think that we see this from a leadership perspective is this is really top of mind in all of our leaders and how we start ingraining not only women in accelerating their growth as entrepreneurs, but just women as leaderships and leaders as it follows within our organization. So I think for me, when I started at the firm 13 years ago, it was just building my supplier diversity initiative on the foundation of the D&I platform that we had. With our chief diversity officer, Karen Tornite, has just really done a great job of executing this particular globally, and us being able to kind of what we call the circle of inclusion, completing that circle of inclusion with our supplier diversity initiative globally. It's just really wrapped in the DNA of how we operate as an organization.
Just one follow-up question to that before we move on to Natalie. Did it originate as a top-down, or was it a down-up?
I think it was top down, down up, side to side. Everywhere we could find somebody, we did. So I think one of the things I think that generally within our organization is that entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, we've been having programs that have really celebrated entrepreneurs, our Entrepreneur of the Year program, and now our Entrepreneurial Winning Women program, is that everybody has the need to help somebody succeed. So not so much a hand up, but just here's the direction of what we want to help and accelerate the growth of those particular companies. And so I think it's senior leadership is key. We've had it in all the areas. So currently my supplier diversity initiative is in the US, Canada, Australia, South Africa, UK, and we're launching Germany coming up. So it's really about the senior leaders in that particular organization. I think education is the real critical factor. Because every business case, and I know we'll get to that, is different within each one of those countries, but really ensuring that that DNA that's woven through our organization, we see that in the leadership and trying to bring on a different component of how our procurement organization can get ingrained in the D&I activity within those particular countries.
So Natalie, so talk to us about ExxonMobil and tell us about your organization and why your diversity and inclusion matters.
ExxonMobil diversity and inclusion is a core value. It's something that we are thinking about at all levels of the organization, at the most senior levels and in everyday conversation. When we think about kind of bringing it further in terms of programs that we are working on, an interesting tidbit that until I started working in this space with ExxonMobil, I didn't realize, and a lot of other people externally didn't realize when I tell them about it, is in our foundation, our ExxonMobil Foundation, which delivers millions and millions of dollars every year to programs all over the world. We have three priorities. You know, we are trying to be strategic and focused in the attention, and one of them is women economic opportunity. And that has fueled a lot of culture focus inside the company for many, many years. And when you, kind of a similar question when you talk about top down or bottom up, that framework and that focus on the issue is very clear. But what is also very clear and very powerful is the grassroots engagement on the topic and how important it has been to the everyday culture that exists in our corporation. For example, in supplier diversity, we have over 200 advocates worldwide that are focused on this topic. And it's not just by name only. They are dedicating their time to this particular topic, and it's all over the world. So again, I think it's, you know, a test of culture is not just a statement. A test of culture is, you know, rolling up your sleeves and getting into it, and that, I think, to me, makes me very proud to be able to work for ExxonMobil, understanding that it aligns with my core values.
So as you talk about having these 200 advocates around the world, how did ExxonMobil, how did you decide what markets you were going to focus on?
You'd like to think that it was a big strategy and we laid out and we said we were going to go here, here, here first and here, here, here second. It was a bit more organic, to be quite honest. It was where we saw that there was a convergence of a few factors that said, okay, let's go here next. And it was where there were employees that had some interest in the topic. And where there were, where we had enough spend that we were doing in a particular country that we thought that we had a good opportunity to have enough scale that we could get some traction. And you know, and third, and this is an interesting one that's a little bit more peculiar to the oil and gas industry. We've got this concept that exists when you're doing exploration and production of hydrocarbons, which are typically belonging to the country, obviously, there is an expectation of engagement of from both an employment perspective and a job opportunity or a contracting perspective that you are being inclusive with respect to the people of that country. And that was a really natural progression for us when we said, okay, if we're going to, we're on board for that and we understand that, but let's even tune it up a little bit further and look at how we can be inclusive within that environment, and also not just focus on one segment of the population within a particular country, but also focus on diversity of those participants, and obviously women was high on that agenda.
So in your industry and in your company, it was organic, it sounds like. What about at EY? How?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing, mostly organic, but I think now what we're doing is kind of taking a look at the overall initiatives. One of the key factors is really having an organization that is established there to define what diversity is in that particular country, as well as organizations that can help us source the actual suppliers. And so WEConnect and a lot of the NMSDC, or the Global Supplier Diversity Alliance affiliates, have been able to do that with our people, because one of the things we've kind of got a checklist of, we're going to go to a next a geography based on this, and as long as they have kind of the top three, which we talked about, spend the people or resources to really help, because we don't want to just join and not be active within that particular organization, but do we have the suppliers that source the specific things that we buy from our procurement organization? And so I think there's kind of a long list of 10, but as long as you have the top 3, we'll actually engage. So we've kind of categorized our numbered our particular organizations or geographies by engaged or emerging, or we're doing some research, or it's 0. We have identified spend, but we don't have really any engagement, and that's sort of how we've classified the different organizations. So I say that we're in those particular countries that I mentioned, but we're in a lot more, but we might not have the level of procurement engagement in those particular organizations. And so I think one of the challenges is that it's organic, because everybody really, I think, wants to get involved in this particular initiative, but it's us making sure that we have the right resources and the right framework to get involved and be an active member in that particular geography.
So along the lines of framework, how do local content requirements apply?
Right. So it depends on the country. So specifically around, I can talk about the Black economic empowerment in South Africa, where we've got a large requirement that comes into play. And great news is that EY does a great job in that space. We've got a great team in South Africa from our procurement organization, and utilizing Jean from WEConnect South Africa and Supply Nation on the minority side. We've done a great job of really doing a lot of the enterprise development that we do. Our goal has gone from 2 to 1, so we met the 1 kind of designation within that particular ranking. So I think utilizing local content and understanding the benefits and helping our local procurement geography understand the benefits of using local suppliers, what that means from a perspective, and just the agility, right? The innovation that's coming in, the not having access. So I think a lot of times we're surprised at how many we're already actually using once we go into our supply chains, and surprised, and a lot of our people don't know. But then just enhancing that overall, I think, awareness of what it means to be utilizing local people in our work, and as well as in our supply chain.
So Natalie, in terms of local company representation, are there formal job descriptions, or are these more volunteer?
We've set up a formal job description for the individual. They're typically doing other jobs as well. Their day job is likely in procurement, or it's in some part of our business. But what we have done that's been very helpful is to lay out what the kind of core expectations are if you're going to engage in this space, and make sure that they're aware of the support systems that we have at headquarters to be able to enable their participation properly. Frankly, I think one of the, we put these job descriptions in place so that there is some boundaries or some understanding, but frequently we are blown away by the enthusiasm that our employees have to engage in this space. It's not, they're putting up their hands saying, I really want to do this, can I do this? And they've got 10 other ideas before you even engage with them. It's very energizing, we have found, in terms of our employees and tapping into their own personal beliefs around being a good citizen and a good contributor to society. And so for those companies out here that are just starting to embark in this space, I would say to you, go for it. It is I think some people sit back and say, I don't know if we can handle it right now. Maybe we'll do it next quarter. Maybe we'll do it next year. But just do it. You would be amazed at the positive fringe benefits that come from this in terms of your corporations, the job satisfaction of individuals that are working and get a chance to engage, and the goodwill that exists in the communities. But more than that, I mean, those are sometimes people dismiss those as soft issues, if you will. I'm a hardcore procurement person. I'm a hardcore bottom line, how is this helping the business? And it has been tremendous for us in terms of our business, increasing competition in our supply chain. Just bringing one other supplier into the mix can have a world of difference when you run a bid. And it is driving innovation, different approaches in the supply chain that you get from not just doing business with the same 3 suppliers that you've done that business with for the last 10 years. It is hardcore bottom line benefit that any corporation would be a fool to not consider.
I think one of the biggest benefits too is that our roles or our organizations within Supplier Diversity offer our personnel or our people to get a lot of professional development. So we're always seeking to have speakers, to have a networking opportunity, engagement with our clients or maybe potential clients for our organizations, but also building a relationship with those suppliers. So I think one of the things that I've really seen as we've done a lot of this kind of global outreach is the development of our people. So they're taking on leadership roles. I mentioned South Africa, but our procurement person in South Africa is now the lead for the advisory committee. So they're taking leadership roles, and their managers are seeing the development of those particular individuals. So I think it's a lot of energy, a lot of passion around the particular focus, but I think it's also a big development for the people in our organizations to really thrive and show what they can all do within a lot of the leadership roles that they can attain.
So something that we didn't plan, but I just want to throw it in there and ask about, is in terms of like business resource groups. Have you leveraged your business resource groups, and how so?
Yeah, so we are pretty ingrained in our professional working network groups. So particularly here in the States, I mean, we use them. They do a lot of our workshops. They deliver a lot of our workshops. We're typically taking about 20 to 30 some odd folks to each one of our kind of national organizations. And so we've been doing and trying to leverage this from a geography perspective as well, as we start going to our London, into the professional women's networking groups, getting them connected to a lot of our women fast forward platforms, and the women engaged in those particular groups, and getting them ingrained. So I know there's a number in Colombia. We do a lot of different things in Mexico with a lot of our leadership. So a lot of those professional networking groups, specifically within WEConnect International, getting them ingrained. So we use them as speakers. We leverage them as they have a lot of expertise to come in and talk to, particularly out of our strategic growth markets group. So our strategic growth markets group is completely focused on entrepreneurs. And so a lot of that thought leadership we're able to dive into and just really disseminate through the network through that particular group.
Natalie?
We would we call them ERGs, Employee Resource Groups, in ExxonMobil, and there has been a really wonderful synergy that has occurred, especially as you branch out into different geographies. It is, for any company that's considering getting into this, those are natural allies, if you will, to engage in this topic, because they're interested in the societal impacts of different things that our companies do, and they're just like, wow, this is a great thing that we can get our hands into. We can help shape the future of our company by engaging in supplier diversity and yeah, it's a great topic to bring up. I couldn't agree more that it is a natural entry point.
But I think it's also an extension of us. So normally there's one or two of us running these global programs or programs. And so we do a lot of teaching. So we teach them about quarterly or annually, go on their little monthly calls to just do a refresher. This is what supplier diversity is. Here's the business case. If you see suppliers, here's our registration, here's how they can get into the procurement place. So we've got websites now of our procurement operations as well as our supplier diversity that are kind of linked so people can understand what it is. And so we all need champions all around the world, and we need to clone ourselves probably about 50 times, but these are kind of our clones that can go and disseminate that message all across the brand.
So there's a room full of people here, and some people are already down this global path, and some people are trying to figure out how to get started, or to just do it. Were there any unexpected challenges that you encountered? And if yes, what were they? And how did you overcome them?
No, there's no challenges. I think the biggest thing is supplier diversity is so prominent in the States. And really having that global mindset when you're going outside of the US to stop and listen. So the biggest part is when you're going to these different countries, understanding what their culture and what their viewpoint is on, so it's supplier diversity here, it's inclusive procurement there, it's something else and then, and learning the language and the lingo. So, what that means to be diverse in that country. So I think a big part of it is you've got to do a lot of listening and if your company has like those global mindset courses to teach you how to really listen when you're going outside into a different country. And then you've got to build that program with people in that particular country because they need to take ownership of it as well and build it to something. So don't just kind of do a shift and lift because it's not going to work. We've tried to do some of that and I'm like, wait, we need to back up. We need to stop. And kind of just listen because it's a really powerful conversation when you start these dialogues in the different countries to seeing what their needs are and how they really want to go about. Because I think Natalie said it best, the passion and energy, but also the ideas that come out. Oh, I never thought about that. We've been doing this for like 15 years here. We never thought about doing it that way. So it's a great dialogue. So I would say stop and listen, and you've got to educate yourself because there's a different business case for each country. And so as we just did Germany's kind of kickoff for D&I, and so going through and cleansing kind of our deck and saying, okay, how do we make this appeal to this particular market? And so each time we do that for a country, what's the key facts? Because what the growth stats in the States are going to be applicable to what's going on in Germany. So we changed that, and we use the resources. WEConnect and the GSDA, are great. They have so much great information and data about the countries you're going to really create that business case and make people understand it from their particular country. So it's been, I would say the biggest thing is stop and listen. I think a couple of times we didn't stop and listen and had to kind of go back and start from scratch. So it's really important, from that perspective.
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, that listening and understanding as opposed to, okay, this is how we do it here in the US, it works, there's all these different councils all over the place. It is a completely different setup in many of these countries. You just even simple things like the geography that you need to deal with, or the systems of how you pay suppliers and how that all gets done becomes, if you're doing business internationally, you're already into that space, but you need to ensure that you are incorporating all of that intricacy into this space as well, or understanding it. Not to say that it's complicated, but you just can't go and cookie cutter it. The other area that we did run into at one point, and we're through it, was in some jurisdictions there is some of the privacy legislation that causes you to have to be careful on how you ask suppliers about a particular status. And so just as you're kind of going into each country, just check with a quick lawyer to say, hey, I'm going to do it this way. Can I say it this way here? Or do I have to, can I just make assumptions? In many countries you can say, yeah, clearly, but that is not the case in other countries. So just don't stub your toe on that, if you will, as you're going out into particular countries. Seek the guidance of the WEConnect staff who have been through this many, many times, and they'll here's how you maneuver through that in this particular country, and just to double check that you just don't run off and do that without consulting internally with any of the particular legal counsels of things that you need to, so you don't end up down a wrong path.
Recognizing the power of the WEConnect International Network and that you all learn from each other, are there any questions out there? Just taking a pause.
I have a question. So in terms of your process to pulse check, thank you. It's Terrence Schreier, Bristol Myers Squibb. In terms of your process to pulse check, or how do you set up the measures of success to know that you're doing well? And when you think about what you've done globally with your programs, talk a little bit about something you would start doing based on what you know now, stop doing, and continue doing.
Nat, you can go first.
I think I would go back to, in terms of continuing doing, is the realization that it energizes our employees to have an opportunity to engage in this space. And I would reinforce that in our approaches as we're fanning out around the world, and understand the power that comes from that. We stumbled upon it. When we started to develop our program, and then our eyes were open and we said, "Wow, this is huge. This is really, really important in terms of for our employees worldwide." So I would not miss those subtle things that can be huge enablers in your program. That would be without kind of getting into too much detail, that's the one thing that comes to mind.
I think one of the things that we really looked at, so we've seen the increase in spend, but we've also seen an increase in revenue generated. So when I say revenue, I think a lot of clients are now asking about supplier diversity on a lot of their tenders, and we're seeing an increase of how this can be a market differentiator and how we respond. Not so much in the US, but we're responding to RFPs from the UK, from South Africa, who are asking the questions. How are you going to use a diverse supplier in the delivery of this service from that? So we're seeing a lot of clients get into this. I'll bring up Barclays. I see Harvey's in the room, had their session in the UK, and it was really eye-opening for our UK teams to see this is not going anywhere. We've been telling you, and now one of your clients is going to hold you accountable for how you do this. So I think the more and more we start seeing a lot of our global clients ask these questions, it's going to be more about how we, I think, continue the education, but also the bigger platform is what's the ROI for justifying this overall geography and growth. Because a lot of our clients are expecting us not only to do this now in the US, but as we deliver services for them across the globe, how are you going to use that local content, use those local suppliers to provide you access to supplier diversity dollars? Ralph? Oh, sorry.
Sheila Dews with McCormick and Company. So do you have goals, different goals for each of your regions in terms of targets, spend targets?
So we've got we've got a goal for the US, and then we've got an overall global goal. So we count them separately. So we've got how we track from each one of those particular geographies. And so since some of them just started, so Canada's probably the oldest one, then the UK, then Australia, then what else did I say? I can't remember, all the rest of them. And so we've got an overall global goal, and then we've got an overall US. So US right now we're spending probably about 16% of negotiable spend with diverse suppliers, and then globally it's anywhere from about 6 to 8% right now from a global standpoint.
So when you say global, you roll it all up into one number or by region?
So it's all one number, and then we've got regional goals for South Africa, for Australia. We're looking at how we're going to target that. Canada has a goal that they have to meet, because one of the things that we have to see improvement and traction is to keep the funding for those particular areas. So where are we getting from a perspective of the return on investment for the investment we're making in this? So some of this is coming from client justification, from revenue we've won, but also from suppliers coming into our supply chain. So we track the cost savings of those particular suppliers in that particular geography, and then the spend.
Okay, this may be TMI, but
Yeah.
how do you determine what the goals are per region? Is there some sort of calculation or?
So really what we've done, if the ones we've been in for more than like 3 years, we're looking at the average and seeing what they've done. And then we do kind of that incremental goal. So some of them stay flat, some of them go up, but just depending. And the other thing that depends on is what the level of procurement activity we're going to have in that particular region. So some years it might be more. So if real estate is really big in that particular area, we know we're going to have a big growth goal, but we're going to have to manage that for the next year because it's not going to be that same level of spend. But we just manage it by spend opportunity, and then looking at it from a historical spend from that perspective.
The one thing, I mean, there's lots of similarities here. The one thing that we have done recently that has helped us in areas that we're less mature in. I mean, in the U.S., obviously, you know, we've got big goals, and you know, there's a whole bunch of structure around it. But one of the approaches that we've recently taken is understanding, you know, there's several steps behind getting to the spend. Unless you are meeting with suppliers and getting the right people in your corporation meeting with suppliers, then spend is unlikely to happen. And then so you meet them. And then the next step is, well, are they on a, you know, are they considered for our bid list? You know, can you get kind of consideration or qualification? You know, and that's another step. Getting on a bid list is a third step. And so we've tried to set up these more bite-sized pieces that we know are the stepping stones along the way to getting to spend, and setting some of those smaller goals in particular areas to help people build up to that ultimate goal of getting the spend. So again, it's something that we have realized that we think is going to be a big enabler in some of our less mature areas, because sometimes if you say, well, you know, you've got a goal of achieve this spend, and they freeze and they say, I don't know how I'm going to do that, I can't do that, but it's more of an enabling and saying, okay, you know, let's start with little pieces and say, let's just bring the suppliers in and start to give them a chance to tell them what their capabilities are, and you know, normally that's like a huge light bulb comes in, because they'll call back and say, wow, like I saw that name on a piece of paper, but I didn't realize that woman on Supplier could do this and this and this and this, and there is value there. There's a huge opportunity there, and I just didn't realize it because I didn't recognize the name of the supplier. It wasn't somebody that we have done business with for the last 15 years, and I didn't realize there was a different way to do this. So just.
And some of the countries have legislation around. So take Australia, for instance, they've got the 3% of your procurement has to be done with indigenous suppliers by 2020. So South Africa has specific goals in their BBBEE kind of requirements. So some of those goals are in there that you have to just at a minimum make or set for those particular countries.
Question.
Harvey Butler with Barclays. I wonder in other parts of the world where women-owned businesses are not as mature as they may be in the U.S., where they're sizable, they're scaled, what are you doing to encourage cross-border joint ventures where women-owned businesses in the U.S. are encouraged to partner with in-country women-owned businesses who are fledgling, and perhaps there's a joint venture opportunity, as well as helping U.S. women-owned businesses think about doing acquisitions in those countries of male-owned companies. And then thirdly, in the pre-venture space, where you will have women who are middle managers, senior executives at large corporations in country who may have aspirations to become entrepreneurs. Are you doing anything to sort of go upstream and sort of engage them in this notion of venture development and getting them thinking about starting a venture and doing an acquisition and that sort of thing?
So I'll take the latter one first. So we've had a number of our women executives go start their own businesses. And we've actually been using a conglomerate, and they've been coming all out of the kind of our BMC, our marketing space. So we've been utilizing a diverse conglomerate to kind of funnel them in to start and run projects with them so they can kind of build up their particular scale of business, but they're part of an overall marketing conglomerate that's all minority, women-owned, LGBT-owned businesses to really start the stepping stone. So there have been a number that have come out of that particular group that have been funneled into this particular organization. The latter side is we do a lot around, especially with WeBank and WEConnect in the Global Programs Committee, about we're going to start doing missions to certain countries to start having these dialogues about our U.S. suppliers looking at other global suppliers. How can they partner? How can they build these relationships? Is there a way to link and look at it from an acquisition space? We've been doing that. So our Entrepreneurial Winning Women program is in about 40 countries. And so we bring them together and look at different things. They all have specific ways that we navigate to see who can pair up, who might have similar service offerings, or who might be completely different. One of our winning women actually became an angel fund. She went to SGF, sold her company, and now she's funding, helping access to capital for women-owned businesses. So there's a lot we're doing in this space with our partners in the room, so WeConnect and WeBank, to really, I think, launch this platform and start having a better dialogue, and I think a more organized dialogue about how our U.S. women-owned businesses can really help and gain from our other geographies, but also I think the other side of that too is how our international women can learn more from our U.S. women as well.
And I would say, I mean, we think about this as well, and while some of it happens naturally, for us, I mean, you know, when I kind of say, oh, how do we deal with that issue, I say, WeConnect. You know, what better spot, an enabler kind of to, a platform to allow that to, and encourage that to happen. The B2B activity, you know, the country to country that has been started to occur, and I think it's going to accelerate rapidly here over the next couple of years. Is for us, ExxonMobil, looking at it, is that's one of the great reasons why we're involved with WeConnect.
And I think when WeConnect has their programming at the national conference of WeBank, I think it's a great way for all the WBEs to meet all around. And I think that the dialogue and the exchange of that is really powerful in order to start creating and doing some of these things that you're talking about, Harvey, from that perspective.
I mean, I would just say, I mean, that like to Pam, I mean, having those suppliers being able to, in a kind of organized fashion, connect with each other. So the WeConnect suppliers and the WeBank suppliers to have a structured way at the conferences to be able to connect is a huge opportunity for both sides. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you just think about a lot of the women-owned businesses in the U.S. You know, a lot of them are, you know, getting to that point where, like, we're going international, and then they're saying, how am I going to go international? Right. It's ready-made, and providing that platform, I think, at one of the conferences would be fabulous.
And I know a bank that might be able to.
Hey, we're going to trouble right here.
Hi, and again, whenever Harvey's in the room, I know he's going to ask the question I was going to ask. So again, Harvey, thank you for taking my question. But I have a second question. The second question is the importing of exceptional WBEs from other countries to the U.S. We seem to have, and again, you talk about the U.S. hat. We have some brilliant WBEs here that are doing global work, but there are brilliant WBEs worldwide who can do work in the United States. What are your programs to help to import that talent here?
And so we've got, we kicked off last April in South Africa our fostering diversity sessions. So we've been doing those. We did it in the UK. We also did it in South Africa to start identifying these particular women so that we can bring them back into our U.S. supply chain. So our chief procurement officer actually went to India when we kicked off our July one in India to get an understanding of the power and the value of these particular global women and how they can be more relevant in our U.S. particular supply chains as well. So we've been looking at how we can, we've got a couple in bids now that hopefully will do some great response, but really looking at how they can fit into our overall. And I looked at the lady that does the snacks, and when she said she was an IBM Encompass, and I just sent a note to my Compass, why isn't she in our cafeterias as well? So I think it's about gaining the knowledge and learning about their capabilities, and I think that's why we use WEConnect to really help us foster that and how they can get us into our U.S. supply chains.
I mean, I just underscore that. I mean, you've got a global organization in WEConnect. You need a global organization, a kind of a clearinghouse of all the data in order to truly accelerate that. I mean, if you're just kind of looking at it country by country, it'll take you 20 years. But the speed with which the information through WEConnect is enabling some of these things is tremendous. So again, we look at it from an ExxonMobil perspective and say, there's another check in the box. Like, that's why WEConnect really works for us.
Okay, this is our last question.
Thanks. Just following that wonderful question, do you also look at the exchange rate? Just thinking from Canada to the US, we have a pretty good exchange rate at the moment, so.
Yeah, I think from a perspective, so I think our procurement teams do look at that from a manner of what that's going to cost us from a cost savings or a cost spent perspective. So I think that is something that we look at from overall on all of our, particularly from all of it, from the India suppliers to our South African suppliers as well, from that perspective. So sometimes that takes into account, but I think the biggest thing is about the overall value that supplier is showing us, right? Are they giving us the innovative solution or what we need to kind of make that case for change?
I mean, of course, I'm Canadian, so I'm keenly interested in the exchange rate. But when you look at all of the benefits, not the business case, and all the different things of doing business globally, all those things have to obviously come into consideration. And there's to me, there's a ton of value in just the suppliers and their competitiveness and their innovation and their passion for doing a good job that the rest is frequently gravy, but it is always a consideration.
Please join me in giving a warm thank you to Natalie and Theresa.